Okay, my name is Dennis Kleinsasser, and I'm doing the interview today. This is August 1st, 2023, and I'm going to be interviewing Ann and Chuck Benson, who I don't know very well, so I'm kind of looking forward to hearing about your history with the church. And I think they're suggesting the place we start is when did you join, and who was the minister, and what are some of your first memories of your involvement here?
Well, I can't remember exactly the year we joined, but we started coming here probably in the early 90s.
90 or 91, I think.
Yes. And I was in a wedding here, and then Kimberly Acker, she invited me to come to Forum. And so we started going to Forum and liked it. And then we joined, I don't know, 91, 92 maybe, you think?
Thinking around then, because we were married here in 93.
Yeah.
And the minister was James White.
Oh, okay.
In fact, he was just coming on board when we
Yeah. So he
started
married
coming.
us, and that's how we came.
What stands out as something that really encouraged you to come to church here? What caught your attention?
I think the Forum.
Adult Forum, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very much.
Yeah. And then
Wide variety of topics. And Dave Seifert was sort of running that forever and a day.
Right.
Yeah.
It was meeting in, where was it meeting? I don't even remember.
It sort of moved all over the place.
Yeah.
Up in the Greek library for a while, and
Started out fairly small, I think, right?
Yeah. I think when we started coming, it was well attended.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, the space we have as the Atrium used to be an old chapel.
Right.
From the late 50s, and that was sort of taken down, and the Atrium then sort of replaced that as the connective tissue between the Greek library building, or the ministers and all that, and the founder's room.
I see. Okay.
Yeah.
Over the years, what kind of groups and committees and so forth have you been a part of? How have you engaged the?
I was part of the mission, whatever it's called, that committee, and then I did flowers for many years.
Oh, you did?
I was coordinating the flowers for many years. I also was part of a group of women that Harriet Wallace put together back in the day. And that also got me I think we met in Forum or one of those groups. Some really wonderful women was part of that.
A support group?
It was kind of just, she wanted to get to know more people in the church and younger people, and so it was a mixture of ages. Harriet and Ruth H and Ellie Coriel, Chris Marr, Ann Brown. It was really a wonderful group, and we would just meet monthly, and we would have a topic and talk about that. So I mean, it wasn't a formal group of the church, but it was really connected me to some of the really wonderful women here.
Great.
Yeah.
And Chuck, how about you?
And you
Oh, in a number of different capacities, buildings and grounds, and then on that committee, and then headed that committee, and then we went into this construction cycle with the Atrium, and working with Nunn Construction on that, and Holger Christensen was the architect. And I wasn't letting him get away with any foolishness at all, being sort of in that field myself. And so I think that knock on wood, I think that's been a good long-term project for lateral movement east-west in the church.
Absolutely.
And that space tends to get used. It's not as wide east-west as I would like it to be, but those are the constraints that we
Right.
sort of inherited.
Yeah, it's beautifully done.
And then, along with Paul in the darkness back here, we've been on the committee, the ad hoc committee that no one understands unless they're on it, which is the mystery committee.
Oh, right.
And
The secretive committee.
Yeah.
and all ministers end up getting in trouble with at the beginning of their. I told Ben when he came here, I said, I just have two pieces of advice for you. Don't mess with the mystery committee, and don't mess with the mystery committee. and about 9 months later, he came up to me and he said, you were right. And Paul and I aren't even the old blue-gray hair females on that committee.
Right.
I've got white hair now, but yeah, it's
Yeah.
so that's only for just a few weeks out of the year, you know, and then all the stuff gets put away. Sort of an important tradition in this church.
Oh, yeah. Over.
And
100
actually, the
years.
only piece of orthodoxy at First Congregational Church is the mystery celebration.
Yeah.
Everything else is up for grabs. But
Yeah, that's true.
also, in the Forum, we were able to meet some really wonderful couples. One couple, sadly, that's gone, the Wenzlaus, Tom and Nancy,
Okay.
and then, of course, Chris and Dick Hall.
Right.
And Chris formed an ad hoc group called the Symphony Group and Dinner Group, and for years and years and years and years and years, a lot of different couples. So we got to know a lot of people really, really well through
Yeah.
that situation, which was a real blessing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Excellent.
In fact, I ended up leading a couple of trips to Europe, guiding some trips to Italy and France, and
Okay.
also to England and Scotland, art and architecture.
Architectural tours.
Yeah, emphasizing the art and architecture, and a core of that came from this church, probably at one point 12 to 15 people.
Oh, really?
And they were larger groups than that a little bit, but the core was some of those people, those couples I was talking about. So that was a lot of
Yeah.
a lot of fun in the early mid 90s, 96, 98,
Okay. Right.
2000.
Yeah, excellent. You actually covered the next question, and that is, who were your friends in the church over the years? And launched right into that. Actually.
Launched
Are there
right
any
in.
others that you think about, or the Halls you mentioned too?
Yeah.
Oh, sure.
Alan Severnson and Pat, God
Okay.
bless her, who's recently
Yeah.
passed
Severn.
on.
Right.
I mean Severn. And the Wenzlaus, the Mullikans, Taffy and Steve, who are no longer
Steenburgens.
Steenburgens.
They were all part of that.
They were all part of
Symphony
that.
group.
Denver, and Kathy and
The Lindemans.
the Lindemans,
Lindemans, sure.
Ted Lindeman,
Right.
part of that group. And
Yeah. Was this the symphony group that you're talking about? Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I know there was a 9 to Dine thing that got going. We never actually ended up
Did we ever do
participating so much in that. So we'd almost sort
that?
of
I
done
don't think we ever did
the
that.
same thing in a different way years and
Yeah,
years
the
and years
symphony
before.
group joined each other for meals too, right?
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, exactly.
And
we
then
do a
it
meal.
ended up being just, we would talk way too long, and so we would just like miss the symphony.
Yeah.
And so then it ended up just a dinner group,
It
you
ended up
know,
being a
because
dinner
we were,
group.
you know, once you get to know people, you're
Right.
like talking about everybody's lives and
Yeah.
things like
Yeah,
that.
excellent.
So, yeah.
Do you have a favorite memory of that stands out for you about church?
It's an interesting question.
Oh, I have to think on that one. Well, of course, my wedding day.
Hey.
Our
there we
wedding
go.
day. My wedding day
Yeah.
was pretty special.
I don't know if it's
When
Our
was that?
families were here.
That was
you know.
1993.
It was before
1993.
Chuck's
Okay.
family passed away,
Yeah.
and my family was here, and
I'll never
it
forget
was a
Jim.
wonderful- and Jim.
We were up at the altar, and he said Charles, and
Oh.
I haven't been referred to that. for decades unless I'd been doing something wrong.
Yeah, right.
My name's Chuck, right?
Right.
So he says, Charles, and I'm looking around, and there was a pregnant pause there, and the bride is looking at me going, well, what seems to be the problem here? Then there's a lot of laughter with hundreds of people, and
Yeah.
Like he forgot his name.
I forgot my name.
That's a great story.
Probably the mysteries too are special too. I remember when I first started attending here and I heard about the mystery. I didn't know what it was. I came and Chuck didn't even come with me. I just came by myself, and it was really a very spiritual experience for me. It was was just so touching and so, I don't know. It was just, I went back home and I was like, wow, that was just really impressive. That was way back in the early 90s. And I didn't know anybody, but it was just, and maybe that was what made it kind of special too. It was just.
It's a great tradition.
It was, yeah.
It is. I think that I can follow on with that and say the same thing. It was a mystery that we attended, and I wasn't even on the committee yet, and it was transfigurative. It was tear in the eye.
Yeah.
And it's all these amateurs. There's
Right.
it just sort of pulling this thing off, and it sort of seemed to.
Pretty amazing.
Every year, we all know what the glitches are on the committee, but most people don't know.
And I think one of the other things that really connected me to the church early on was that my brother had just come out as gay, and it was when Amendment 2 was going on, and we had, after church, they had like discussions on it, and some of the speakers about that whole issue. And it just opened my eyes in a whole nother way to how Christianity can be very inclusive and embrace, people, because I came from a very strict background. And so that was just really a wonderful thing for me as far as my relationship with my brother.
I know that we recently lost Betty Lynn here.
Oh yeah.
And Lynn and Betty Lynn, as a lesbian couple, I know at about that same time there was a bunch of hullabaloo about whether or not they should be allowed to be married, not only legally, but there was even some discussion, and I remember just, these are very valuable members of our church, and we need to be very supportive of them. And I just think that, and we've had some schisms in this church. We've had some rough times where some groups of people have left, and then recently with the minister that left, and I think we're in probably a pretty good place, but those kinds of things can create, I think, some rawness that takes a while to heal.
Right.
Yeah, I think that, and everybody wants a piece of the minister, don't they? Everybody wants to be good friends with the minister.
Yeah.
And so I can't even imagine at this church or any other church being in a position like that. It probably truly is a calling, isn't it? That's a difficult to be a minister and a pastor and all of these different roles.
Yeah,
pretty
and
tough.
Meet everyone's expectations. Yeah.
I mean, with Jim, I love Jim to death, but on the buildings and grounds, we all the time had to sort of stop him trying to spend money that he didn't really have.
Well, he's a visionary.
He's a visionary.
So,
That was his job, but our job was to kind of wait a second.
The open and affirming issue, you remember that well.
Oh yeah.
And of course, you were personally.
Yeah.
There were some schisms, I assume, around that issue at the time.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, there were some people that left, and
But overall, I think the church was very supportive of that.
I think so.
And, we were the first church that, in the area, kind of, I think, that
Right.
Jim led that. I think that kind of whole thing.
I don't even know if I personally would have been supportive of that if I hadn't been raised in a family where my mom's baby brother was gay.
Oh. Right.
And lived with the same partner in Laguna Beach for decades and decades. And he was my favorite relative. I thought everybody else was nuts. But I thought Uncle Jack was just spot on.
So you had a personal background.
Exactly. And so the whole thing about this open and affirming thing,
made a lot
it made a lot of sense to me, just thank goodness from my family history a little bit.
Yeah.
I don't know if that would have been the case maybe if I hadn't had an extended family member that was gay.
So you actually both had a personal connection to the issue. Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah.
The other question that is on my list here is any advice you might have for the next 150 years.
Advice to whom?
Yeah. To the church congregation, I guess. What do you think is important in terms of the future?
Well, I think the open and affirming, and to be open, I don't know what group of people right now, the LGBTQ.
Right.
But we're in an age where people are, I think, revisiting labeling the other, whoever the other is. We are not the other, but somebody is, and somebody needs to be stood up for and championed and protected.
Right.
And I hope we continue to expand that open and affirming past just gay, lesbian, but transgender, who knows what group of people are being treated in a marginalized way.
Yeah.
And when you're not one of those, it's sort of hard to look ahead. But I also think from the pragmatic view that we need to be careful again here about expanding into the spending of money that we may not have. We had a wonderful fund for a while that came to an end, and it sort of, I think, created a little bit of bump and grind. And I think we need to be visionaries, but at the same time, we need, I think, to be alert to and careful with being pragmatic with the spending of money, because we've run into some trouble with that, and hopefully we won't revisit that again. That's my hope here. Churches are delicate places financially, and they're so dependent on volunteer dollars.
Right, and volunteer effort. Really.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Anything else that I've left out that you think is important to share with us?
I just think this church has been such a great beacon in this community. It's been, such a forward-thinking church, a very open, inclusive, and it's just a voice that I think is so important, especially in today's political climate, and people being very dogmatic and just a different way that Christianity is lived. And I think that's so important, and I think we're going to continue that, I hope. To be that voice.
I would agree with that wholeheartedly. I think it's a real beacon. The one thing I wish that we would do is, I think we're pretty progressive and liberal in a really good sense here. But I just feel that we need to be more Lincoln Douglas debate like that. To be truly liberal, we ought to invite in the conservative view to discuss in that the proper kind of a setting. And we tend to, I think, be a beacon more on one side
The liberal side.
the liberal side, but I think it might be good for this membership to sort of hear more of the conservative view, not necessarily to swing that way,
Right.
but to sort of a fair and balanced approach.
Good point.
And I think that would be a nice forum for maybe us to explore in the future a little bit. And we live in a pretty conservative community, and it's swung
We
more
certainly do.
that way. But I think it's good to hear all sides to a point of view, even something as as volcanic as LGBTQ. I think sometimes when we hear maybe somebody's fears about all of that,
Right.
we're able to be even more supportive of it,
Yeah. Yeah, I agree.
if that makes sense.
It does.
I just wish we
Yeah.
were doing a little bit more of that here. But I love this place. It's
That comes through.
it's a sanctuary.
Yeah.
It
really
has
is.
been for us over
Yeah.
the decades,
Great.
most certainly.
Well, as a newer member, I've certainly enjoyed the conversation and hearing all the contributions you've made over the years, and thank you.
Thank you.
Leaving the legacy that you have so far.
Well, thanks for inviting us in. I can't believe we've been members here over 30 years.
Yeah.
Time just sort
Time
of
does fly. doesn't
time
it?
does fly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks so much.
Yeah.